What if the biggest lie in ancient history is not hidden underground, but carved into stone for everyone to see? Because 5 Egyptian sources name the builders of the pyramids, and not one of them names the pharaoh history tells us to trust. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built with 2.3 million stone blocks. It lines up with true north with an error of less than 7 seconds or 1/20th of a degree. Its base is level within 2 centimeters across 230 m. The stones fit so tightly that a playing card cannot slide between them. And the official record of who built depends on one piece of evidence. 1. A set of red paint marks found inside a sealed chamber above the king's chamber, discovered by Colonel Howard Weiss in 1837. It reads, "The work gang of Khufu," a paint crew mark that is the entire basis for giving the most precisely built structure in human history to the pharaoh Khufu. No building plan, no construction diary for the granite work. No tool list, no engineer's name, just a paint mark in a stress relief chamber that Weiss reached by blasting through the ceiling with gunpowder, and that at least 2 scholars have questioned as a possible fake based on the style of the hieratic script used. The most studied building on Earth is linked to a specific pharaoh because of a paint mark found by a man with dynamite. But here is the problem that is harder to ignore. 5 separate Egyptian sources, carved in stone and written on papyrus across 2,000 years of Egyptian history, name the real builders. They do not name Khufu. They do not name any pharaoh. They name a specific group by a specific title, using the same official words the Egyptians used to record real history. 5 different sources, 5 different centuries, 5 different places, the same name. And that name was carefully erased from every public monument in Egypt during a campaign so complete that it took 3,000 years to piece together what had been removed. This is a truth that has been ignored for a very long time. Make sure you stay with me until the very end, because what comes next may completely change the way you think about who built the pyramids. In the next several minutes, you will see who the 5 sources name, what the hieroglyphs call these builders in their own official language, and why the physical evidence at every major pyramid site confirms what the Egyptian sources say and goes against what the official record claims. If ancient history that people avoid fascinates you, hit subscribe. Every week, we decode what Egyptologists will not translate publicly. But here is what makes this even stranger. The name has been sitting in plain sight in 5 museum collections on 3 continents for over a century, and no mainstream publication has connected all 5 in a single study. The first source is the Turin King List, a 19th dynasty papyrus held at the Egyptian Museum in Turin under catalog number CAT 1874. It lists the rulers of Egypt in order. Before the historical pharaohs, before NAR, before the first dynasty, it lists a group it calls the Shamsu, the followers of Horus, with reign lengths measured in thousands of years. The list uses the same format, the same grammar, structure, and the same verb forms for the Shem-Suer entries as it uses for Ramesses II and Seti I. The only difference is the time scale. The scribes who made the Turin list did not treat the Shemuhor as mythology. They treated them as rulers. They put them in a king list because they were kings. The second source is the Palermo stone, a 5th dynasty basalt slab now split between museums in Palermo, Cairo, and London. It records events from the pre-dynastic period using the same official language it uses for recorded historical events. The Shamsu appear in the pre-dynastic section with notes for reign events. The same format used for every pharaoh in the historical section. The scribes who carved the Palermo stone did not separate the Shamsu entries from the historical entries with any grammatical difference. They used the same style, the same verb forms, the same ways of recording events. If you remove the names and dates from the stone and asked a trained Egyptologist to tell which entries were myth and which were history based on grammar alone, there would be no way to tell them apart. Same name, same official style, different century, different material, different place. The third source is The Edfu building text carved on the walls of the Temple of Horus at Edfu and translated by Egyptologist E. Raymond in her 1969 publication through Manchester University Press. The Edfu text described the Shu as the original builders who set up the first sacred structures during Zept, the first time. Raymond noted that the texts use engineering words to describe these builders and their methods. The texts give construction techniques, material choices, and structure sizes using words found elsewhere only in quarry records and building office documents. Raymond called the content building instructions expressed in mythological language. She saw that the words were technical. She pointed this out in her notes. She published it. She spent 15 years translating these texts, and she did not follow the engineering meaning. Her work has been cited in over 200 academic papers since 1969. Not one of those papers has dealt with the engineering words as a literal description of real construction by real builders. The fourth source is the pyramid texts of Unas at Saqqara, the oldest religious writings ever found inside a pyramid, dating to about 2350 BCE. The texts refer to the Shamsu using determinative markers kept for historical people in official records, not the markers used for gods in religious hymns. The scribes classified them as historical. The fifth source is the inventory stela found by August Marriott in 1857 at Giza, held at the Cairo Museum under Catalogue number CG 1438. The stela records Khufu arriving at Giza and finding the Great Pyramid already standing. He does not build it. He repairs it. He clears sand from the Sphinx. The stela calls the Sphinx a monument of the Shamsu. Mainstream Egyptology has called the stela a late fake since the 1890s. But Marriott, who found it and who was the first director of the Egyptian Antiquity Service, dated it to the 4th dynasty. His dating has not been disproved. It has been rejected because the content is inconvenient. If the stela is real, the pyramid came before Khufu. If it came before Khufu, it was built by the civilization the stela names, the Shamsu. 5 sources: Turin, Palermo, Edfu, Saqqara, Giza. 5 places, 5 different centuries of writing, the same name, the same official style, the same claim. The pyramid builders were not pharaohs. They were the Shamsu. This is not guesswork. This is not a fringe reinterpretation. Every one of these sources is held in a museum. Every one has been catalogued, photographed, and translated by trained scholars. What has not happened is a single mainstream publication connecting all 5 and facing what it means when 5 independent official sources spanning 2,000 years of Egyptian history named the same builders using the same title. That study has never been published. That is where the record ends. And then comes the part the stone proves, because the physical evidence at every major pyramid site confirms what the 5 sources say, and goes against the official timeline. The oldest construction work at Giza is the most precise, not the newest, the oldest. The Great Pyramid's core masonry, the deepest, earliest layers, shows tighter tolerances than anything built in the later dynasties. The Serapeum boxes at Saqqara, 24 granite boxes each, weighing up to 100 tons, are cut to interior flatness tolerances of 2/10,000ths of an inch. The Osirian at Abydos, an underground structure, discovered by Flender Petrie in 1902, contains doorways 4.5 meters tall and wall blocks weighing between 50 and 100 tons. Egyptologist E.E.S. Edwards wrote in 1985 that the Osirian's construction method still cannot be explained by any technique we can confidently link to historical Egyptian workers. The Valley Temple at Giza is built from limestone blocks weighing up to 200 tons, quarried from the Sphinx enclosure and fitted together without mortar. The technology runs backward. The oldest work is the best. Later dynasties made rougher cuts, more cracking, and more signs of ordinary mechanical tools. Civilizations are supposed to begin rough and grow toward precision. Egypt goes in the opposite direction. The finest work comes before the recorded civilization, which means the technology did not grow in Egypt. It arrived already working at a level later generations could not match, could not keep, and eventually lost completely. The 5 sources name who brought it, the Shamsu. The Sphinx itself carries the physical signature. In 1991, geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University studied the erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure walls. The vertical weathering channels require thousands of years of steady, heavy rainfall to form. Not wind, not sand rain. The kind of steady rain that last fell on the Giza Plateau before 7000 BCE, when the Sahara was green savanna, not desert. No geologist has published a peer-reviewed reply that disproves Schoch's erosion study. The objections came from Egyptologists who argued that no civilization able to carve the Sphinx existed before 7000 BCE. That is not a geological argument. That is a historical assumption overruling physical evidence. The erosion is still on the walls. It still requires rainfall, and the rainfall stopped over 9,000 years ago. The Sphinx's head adds another layer. It is much too small compared to the body. The body is 73 m long. The head is about 5 m, from chin to crown. Every other Egyptian monument keeps balanced proportions. The Sphinx does not. Geologist Colin Rear published an analysis in 2001 showing that the head was recarved from a larger original. The body shows deep erosion matching Schoch's rainfall study. The head shows very little erosion, matching a surface carved more recently during the dynastic period. The original face was removed and replaced with a pharaoh's likeness. The builders were literally defaced. Their monument was kept. Their identity was carved off it. That is not natural damage. That is erasure. In stone, if the Sphinx enclosure was carved before the desert formed, then whoever carved it was not a 4th dynasty pharaoh. The pharaohs came after the desert. The inventory stela says Khufu found the Sphinx already buried in sand. The geology says the enclosure was carved before there was a desert to make sand. The stela and the stone agree with each other. They disagree with the official timeline, and both point to the same builders, the ones the 5 sources name, the Shu. What the standard analysis leaves out is the determinative. In Egyptian hieroglyphic writing, every important word carries a small marker called a determinative that tells you what kind of word it belongs to. The determinative attached to Shamsu across all 5 sources is not the one used for gods. It is not the one used for spirits. It is not the one used for mythological beings. It is the determinative used for a people in motion, walking legs, the same marker used for migrating populations, traveling officials, and moving work crews. The scribes classified the Shamsu as physical beings who moved, who traveled, who were present at specific places, not heavenly, not abstract, present, working, building, and then no longer there. The absence is itself evidence. The Diary of Marer, discovered at Wadi al-Jurf in 2013 by archaeologist Pierre Tal, is the oldest papyrus ever found in Egypt. It records the movement of limestone blocks to Giza during Khufu's reign. It is a shipping log. It records boats, crews, schedules, and amounts with the precision of a modern logistics document. Every limestone block is accounted for. Every crew is named. Every trip is timed. The official detail is extraordinary, and the granite work is not mentioned, not once. Not a single entry for the cutting, transport, or placement of one granite block. For a civilization that recorded the delivery schedule of limestone with the thoroughness of a shipping record, the complete lack of any granite construction record is not an accident. It is a finding. The most precisely cut stone in the ancient world left no paper trail, no quarry log, no tool list, no labor roster, no delivery schedule. As if whoever did the granite work operated outside the official system that produced the Diary of Marer, outside the workforce that filed reports, outside Khufu's chain of command completely. The limestone work was documented because Khufu's workers did the limestone work. The granite work was not documented because Khufu's workers did not do the granite work. The 5 sources say the builders came before the pharaohs. The Diary of Mirror confirms it by what it leaves out. The granite work was already finished when Khufu arrived. Now, here is why the name was erased. Around 1336 BCE, the pharaoh Akhenaten died. Akhenaten had done something the priesthood of Amun could not accept. He had named the Shamsu in his inscriptions at Amarna. He had described them as the original builders. He had claimed that the knowledge built into the pyramid structures came from them, not from the gods of Amun's theology. This was not a religious disagreement. It was a political crisis. If the Shamsu were the real builders, then the pharaohs were inheritors, not originators. Their authority was secondary. The priesthood of Amun got its power from the claim that the pharaohs were the direct agents of divine creation. The Shamsu made that claim impossible, so the name was removed. Akhenaten's successor, Horm, launched the most complete erasure campaign in Egyptian history. Every cartouche carrying Akhenaten's name was chiseled from every temple wall in Egypt. His capital at Amarna was taken apart block by block. His monuments were broken apart and used as fill material inside other structures, buried inside the walls of buildings that would stand for thousands of years with the evidence hidden inside them. But the campaign went further than Akhenaten. Every official reference to the Shamsu as historical builders, every inscription that treated them as physical people from before the pharaohs rather than mythological symbols, was targeted. The priests did not simply remove the name, they replaced it. Where inscriptions credited the Shu with building achievements, the replacement text credited the ruling pharaoh or the gods of Amun's theology. The erasure was not passive. It was an active rewriting of history on a massive scale, carried out across hundreds of temple sites by teams of stonemasons working under priestly authority. The name survived only in restricted priestly archives and in sources the campaign could not reach. Temple walls that had been sealed centuries before the campaign began, papyri that had been buried in tombs, stone fragments that had been broken and scattered across collections that did not yet exist. The second erasure came in 391 CE, when a Christian mob burned the Serapeum at Alexandria. The Serapeum held the largest collection of Egyptian technical manuscripts outside the temple libraries. Among the listed holdings were texts called the accounts of the followers and the records of the first builders. Those texts contained the interpretive context that connected the 5 sources, the translations, the cross-references, and the official framework that made the Shamsu entries readable as history rather than mythology. The burning was not random destruction. Bishop Theophilus of Alexandria ordered it on purpose. Church writings described the Egyptian texts as heretical because they recorded a history that reached too far back, a timeline that could not fit inside the biblical chronology. The texts that named the builders of the oldest structures on earth were labeled pagan and destroyed. When the library burned, the context burned with it. The 5 sources survived because they were carved in stone or kept in separate collections. The key to reading them together was destroyed. Napoleon's 1798 expedition produced the Description de l'Egypte, a 23-volume survey. Volume 11 of the first edition contains references to pre-dynastic builder inscriptions at multiple sites, including Abydos and Edfu. Those references were removed from the second edition of 1817. The plates are listed in the index by number. The content is missing. The British Museum holds papyri from early Giza expeditions catalogued as EA 10782 through EA 1084. Museum scholar Samuel Birch examined them in 1879. A group of them was listed as too damaged for reliable translation. Later scholars in the 1980s found them mostly intact, containing accounts of pre-pharaonic builders described in physical rather than symbolic terms. A review was submitted to the British Museum Journal in 1989. It was not accepted for publication. The modern gatekeeping runs through Zahi, who controlled Egyptian excavation permits from 2002 to 2011. In 2007, A team from the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago applied for access to the Cairo Museum archive files containing Salem Hassan's survey photographs of pre-dynastic inscription panels at multiple sites. The application was denied. The stated reason was that the files were under conservation review. The review has not produced a published status report in 17 years. Now, here is where it becomes active. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project detected a 30-meter void above the Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid using muon tomography. The void has an angled ceiling. Its shape matches no known structural feature. No purpose has been identified for it in any existing theory of pyramid construction. Mahi Tabi, the project's lead researcher, announced the discovery in the journal Nature. He applied for permission to drill a small access hole and insert a camera. Denied in 2018, denied in 2019, denied in 2020, and denied in 2021. As of 2024, the void remains sealed. 7 years of detection, 0 years of investigation. In 2020, ground penetrating radar beneath the Sphinx enclosure detected geometrically regular anomalies at depths between 4 and 12 m. Right-angle edges that do not match natural formations. The survey was published in the Journal of Archaeological Science. The team applied for excavation in 2021. The permit remains under review. Robert Schoch has applied 3 times since 2017 for radar access beneath the Sphinx's left paw, where a 1991 survey by geophysicist Thomas Göbekli detected a rectangular cavity 9 m below the surface. The cavity has right-angle geometry consistent with a built chamber, not a geological void. Schoch wanted to insert a small borehole camera. Denied in 2017, denied in 2019. No response was received to his 2022 application. The physical evidence that would confirm or deny what the 5 sources claim about who built the structures at Giza is sitting beneath. The sand, detected by instruments, documented in published papers, and locked behind permits that have not been granted. The instruments found the anomalies. The inscriptions named the builders. The connection between them has never been officially investigated. Now, let me be clear. I am not saying the Shu were a technologically advanced supercivilization that built the pyramids with alien machinery. The 5 sources do not describe anything supernatural. They describe administrators, builders, a people with a title and a territory and a timeline. The determinatives classify them as physical, present, working. The Edfu text describe their methods using engineering words. The Turan King list records them as rulers. The Palermo stone records their events in official language. Whatever the Shu were, they were classified by the Egyptians themselves as historical, not mythological. The distinction matters because the Egyptians knew the difference. The Book of the Dead is mythology. The king lists are administrative. Different texts, different grammar, different determinatives, different purpose. The Shemuhor appear in the administrative category every time across all 5 sources. What we have to face is the weight of what these 5 sources are saying when read together. The Turan King list names them. The Palermo stone records their events. The Edfu texts describe their constructions using engineering terms. The pyramid texts classify them as historical using administrative determinatives. The inventory stela places them at Giza before Khufu. 5 sources, 5 museums, 5 centuries, 1 name, and the physical evidence at the sites they are credited with building shows the oldest. Work is the most precise. The technology runs backward. The granite construction has no official record in the diary of Maurer, and the Sphinx enclosure carries erosion that comes before the desert itself. The name is Shamsur, the followers of Horus. It appears in Turin, Palermo, Edfu, Saqqara, and Giza. It was chiseled off temple walls by the priests of Amun. It was burned in the library at Alexandria. It was removed from Napoleon's survey. It was declined by the British Museum Journal. It was locked behind a conservation review that has lasted 17 years. 5 erasure campaigns across 3,300 years, each carried out by a different authority for a different reason, and all targeting the same name. And it is still carved in stone in 5 places across Egypt and in museum collections on 3 continents, readable by anyone who knows the language, naming the builders of the most precisely constructed monuments in human history. The permits to investigate what those builders left beneath the sand have been denied. The name has been erased from every public surface the priesthood could reach. But stone is harder than politics. The 5 sources are still there. The name is still readable. And the question they leave open, why was this name worth erasing from an entire civilization's history, has never been answered. Not because the answer does not exist, but because the permit to look for it has never been granted.